AMD just dropped their new batch of graphics hardware built on RDNA 4, and the big deal here is machine learning. They've cranked up ML performance big time, which means FSR 4, basically AMD's new upscaling tech that's supposed to compete with NVIDIA's DLSS. And honestly, it actually does. But here's where it gets interesting. AMD didn't build this alone. Turns out Sony was in on it too, through something called Project Amethyst. And then Mark Cerny, yeah, that Mark Cerny, the guy behind PlayStation hardware, sat down with Digital Foundry and said, "Our target is to have something very similar to FSR 4's upscaler as the next evolution of PSSR. So yeah, it's coming to PlayStation, just not right away." Now, Digital Foundry did their thing, testing FSR 4 against DLSS 3.7, 4.0, and AMD's own older version, FSR 3.1. And their verdict, it's a huge jump over FSR 3.1, even beating DLSS 3.7 in some cases. But DLSS 4 still has the edge in certain areas. NVIDIA's been at this for a while, so no surprise there. But here's the catch. PlayStation 5 Pro isn't just gonna magically support FSR 4 overnight. Cerny says, "Our focus for 2025 is working with developers to integrate PSSR into their titles. In parallel, though, we have already started to implement the new neural network on PS5 Pro. Basically, 2025 is about getting PSSR up and running properly. And then by 2026, they're hoping to have something really close to FSR 4 working on PS5 Pro." Now, if you're wondering whether the PS5 Pro can even handle FSR 4, Cerny seems pretty confident. He pointed out that the console has 308-bit TOPS, which is a fancy way of measuring ML performance, and that, in his words, compares very well to the recently released AMD GPUs. So it's not like they need to completely rebuild the console's architecture, just tweak things. And then there's this whole thing about sparsity, which, if you're not deep into ML hardware, is basically a trick to cut down on unnecessary computations. NVIDIA uses it to speed up DLSS, but Sony's like, yeah, we don't really need that for this upscaler. What's even more interesting is how this collaboration isn't just about PS5 Pro. Project Amethyst seems to be a long-term play, like beyond this console generation. Cerny put it this way, "We're stronger together than apart, so it makes a lot of sense to combine some of our resources when tackling these problems." That means they're not just sharing software ideas, they're probably going to influence how PlayStation hardware is built in the future. And then there's the PC side of things. AMD's Jack Hein already hinted that FSR 4 might be used to boost battery life on mobile devices, and Cerny confirmed that while Sony will have its own spin on these algorithms, the biggest win is when developers can freely move their code from device to device. So this whole thing, it's bigger than just PlayStation. Now the final piece of the puzzle, ray tracing. AMD showed off this crazy toy shop demo using path tracing and machine learning-based rendering. Sounds a lot like NVIDIA's ray reconstruction, right? So naturally, Digital Foundry asked if that's part of Amethyst too. And Cerny, he just said, "All I can say is stay tuned." So yeah, what do you think? Is PlayStation actually catching up to NVIDIA, or is this just clever marketing? So Sony just filed another wild patent, and this time it's for a controller that can literally heat up or cool down your hands while you play. Yeah, like imagine playing a horror game and suddenly your controller gets ice cold just to mess with you. Or, I don't know, maybe you're grinding through a long session and your hands start getting sweaty. This thing could cool them down automatically. Now, this isn't just some random one-off idea. Sony's been filing a bunch of patents lately, all focused on tweaking and reimagining their controllers. There was that Braille patent not too long ago, which aimed to make gaming more accessible for visually impaired players. And now, this. It's almost like they're quietly testing the waters for some big future controller innovation. So, what's actually in this thing? According to the patent, which was filed in August 2024 and just got published on March 6, 2025, it's got a heat transfer module built into the handles. And it's not just a simple heater or fan. It's got separate heating and cooling regions, which means it can fine-tune the temperature based on how different parts of your hands are feeling. Like, if your fingers are cold, but your palms are sweaty, it could adjust accordingly. Kinda wild, right? Now, the patent also hints at other possible uses for this tech. It mentions standalone joysticks, steering wheels, even a remote. And there's also a mention of an external module, which, if it ever happens, could mean this isn't a whole new controller, but rather an add-on that attaches to the existing Dualsense. That part's a little vague, but still, it's interesting. Of course, here's the thing. Patents don't always turn into real products. Sony files tons of them, and a lot never see the light of day. But this one feels like it fits into a bigger pattern. We've already got controllers with haptic feedback, adaptive triggers. Why wouldn't they experiment with temperature control next? So, what do you think? Would this actually be useful, or is it just one of those cool-on-paper ideas that never really takes off? Alright, so one of the most unexpectedly impressive games at the showcase, Tides of Annihilation. And what you're seeing right now, captured on a PS5 Pro, is a mix of cinematics and gameplay that is just absurdly good-looking. Like, my brain physically struggles to process how this is real. Now, the studio behind this? Eclipse Glow Games. Never heard of them? Yeah, same. Turns out they're brand new. But here's the kicker. They've got that 10-cent money backing them. And the dev team? It's stacked with industry veterans, many of them from Ubisoft, which, if I had to guess, probably means this is an offshoot of Ubisoft Shanghai or something along those lines. And here's the thing. This is yet another massive game coming out of China that makes a lot of Western studios look like they're just not even trying. The tech, the visuals, the sheer ambition of it, it's on another level. Now, we've seen this kind of thing before. Game comes out, looks mind-blowingly good, and then, well, reality hits. So the rule of thumb here is cautious optimism. But, and this is a big but, what they did next really stood out. Instead of just dropping a cinematic-heavy trailer and calling it a day, they pulled a Crimson Desert move and showed off actual gameplay, and not just quick cuts, like straight-up raw footage, menu screens and all, which suggests they've already got a working demo. And then there's the gameplay itself. It's got that near and stellar blade energy, fast, fluid combat with this almost glowing sense of style. And the animation work? Insane. Cloth physics? Booyah. Even the summons look crazy. But the real test is always performance. Because when something looks this good, the question is, what's the catch? Now, if I had to guess, I'd say there's some dynamic resolution scaling happening. The cutscenes are crisp, but when things get chaotic, tons of particles, reflections, fast movement, you start to see a drop in sharpness. And that could mean one of two things. Either YouTube's compression is messing with it, or the game is quietly lowering resolution mid-fight to maintain frame rates. Which, to be fair, is pretty common. But the bigger picture here, this is exactly why competition is so good for gaming. Because when studios put out stuff like this, it forces the rest of the industry to step up. Like, you hear companies say, oh, we just couldn't push NPC fidelity any further because of hardware limitations. And then a game like this comes along and just destroys that excuse. And the wildest part? This game probably cost a fraction of what big-budget Western titles do. I'd be shocked if it cost more than $100 million to make. And it's going to turn a profit fast if it keeps this level of quality. So yeah, this is a game to watch. If the final version delivers on what we're seeing here, it's going to be something special. So, Hideo Kojima is back at it again, pushing the boundaries of whatever the hell reality even is in Death Stranding 2. And if you thought the first game was weird, like baby in a jar, ghosts dragging you into oil puddles weird, apparently we haven't seen anything yet. At SXSW, Kojima straight up warned players that Troy Baker's Higgs is on a whole new level of absurdity. He said, Higgs is not like twice or thrice better, it's 100 times better than DS1. And then he basically told fans they're gonna be so confused by the character that they'll want to throw their controller. I'll apologize beforehand. And Baker, he just smirked and said, mission accomplished if you do. Now, we don't see a ton of Higgs in the latest trailer, but there's a moment, a tentacle, like actual tentacle, comes out of his mouth and lunges at Norman Reedus's character, Sam, which is already peak Kojima. But then you remember last year's trailer, where Higgs was wielding an electric guitar that also shoots lightning. And yeah, this is clearly going to be next level unhinged. And here's the thing, Kojima almost killed off Higgs in the first game, but apparently he was just too popular. Kojima said, Higgs was so popular last time I thought I can't kill him. So he's coming back, apparently. But Higgs is not a normal villain, he's a loved character. So instead of just bringing him back the way he was, Kojima decided to turn things way up. Oh, and why is Higgs suddenly all musical? Apparently, Kojima was watching Troy Baker's Instagram posts during the pandemic, where he was playing guitar and singing, and thought, yeah, let's give Higgs a rock star arc, which, in hindsight, makes the lightning guitar gun make way more sense. And then there's Baker himself, talking about how completely insane the world of Death Stranding is. He literally pointed at Kojima Kojima and said, "It's a mind-blowing world with mind-blowing characters, and all we have to do is just play it beat to beat and scene to scene." Everything about this sequel looks bigger and better. I can't say anything for certain, but it definitely seems like they're leaning way harder into action. The first game was, what, 80% quiet walking, 20% action? That ratio looks completely flipped here. Multiple moments in the trailer show combat against humans and BTs, which look even more grotesque this time around. And there are these man-made BTs now, machine BTs or something. I have no idea what's going on, but it looks incredible. The first Death Stranding was divisive, especially at launch, mostly because people just didn't know what to make of it. It was a game about delivering packages across difficult terrain, and that's what you spent most of your time doing. It wasn't an open-world stealth game, even if it had little bits of MGS-V's DNA in there. It was a brilliantly designed walking simulator, groundbreaking in its own way, but not what people expected from Kojima. This time, it feels like he's leaning into what people actually wanted from Death Stranding. There are actual enemy bases, patrols, vehicles. Yes, those existed in the first game, but the enemies in this one feel more like real factions with actual motivations, not just random cargo thieves. It looks and feels like a proper successor to Metal Gear. And then there's the story, which is just as bizarre as ever. We've got a mysterious armored samurai character, a literal doll man who I cannot believe is real, and more human allies this time around. The gameplay still looks mission-based, probably still centered around deliveries, but the moment-to-moment gameplay seems way more about stealth and infiltration. If the first game was about connections, this one seems like it's taking the opposite direction. Are we still expanding a network, building roads and zip lines, making the world more livable? Or is the game shifting away from that entirely? I don't know, but if that system is gone, it would be a little disappointing. There was something so satisfying about transforming a barren, hostile world into something easier to traverse. The environments also look way more built up this time. Jungles, deserts, snowy mountains, you name it. And some of the most intriguing parts of the trailer show the environment changing in real time. Water draining into a lake, a wildfire spreading through trees, roads, cars, electrical wires, and a massive electrical storm in the distance. It feels like the world is more dynamic, like things can shift and evolve based on what's happening in the game. And let's talk about the moment where we see a river forming right in front of us. At first, it doesn't seem like much, but the way the water spreads out makes it look like this is a new river, like this wasn't here before. Is this part of the game's mechanics? Can we trigger environmental changes? Is this a natural event or something we can influence? I have no idea, but it's fascinating. With all this being said, the PS5 Pro is way more powerful than people give it credit for. And now that we know FSR4 is coming to it, this thing just got even better. It was already a beast, but now it's getting a cutting-edge upscaler that's actually competing with NVIDIA's DLSS. And I'm not just saying this from personal experience. I'm not saying this because I'm sponsored by Sony either. I'm saying this because ever since the Pro was released, I've seen hundreds of comments and testimonials from people who actually use the thing. Now, I get it. $700 is a lot of money. The price shocked people. And yeah, I do think Sony pulling the disk drive was kind of a bold move, but when you actually look at what this console is doing, it's kind of insane. It's not just about raw power. There's a 2 terabyte high-speed SSD, so storage isn't an issue. Wi-Fi 7 is a thing now, which basically doubles the bandwidth of Wi-Fi 6. And then there's Ultra Boost mode for older games. No patches, no updates. It just makes them look better and runs them at higher frame rates if they're unlocked. And honestly, Rockstar needs to just unlock the FPS in Red Dead 2 already, because I'm tired of playing on my laptop. And here's the thing people keep ignoring. It is literally impossible to build a PC for $700 or even $1,000 that matches or beats the PS5 Pro. And I know people love to throw numbers and specs around, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense. So now, with FSR4 and PSSR coming, the PS5 Pro isn't just getting better, it's straight up flexing. And honestly, this might be one of the best console upgrades Sony has ever pulled off. If you want to be ahead of all the gaming leaks and news, specifically PlayStation news, time for you to subscribe. And as always, a like on the video is very much appreciated.